Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Excited for today's guest. She is a nope coach, an author and a healer, and she helps overgivers and people pleasers learn to set boundaries and say no without feeling mean. That is such an important topic. I'm so excited to be talking about it today. So excited to be rocking out today with Suzanne Culberg. Suzanne, you ready to rock?
I certainly am, Tim. Let's go.
Awesome. So we always start off here in a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business we could be inspired by.
Oh, that's a great question. So I can think of so many, but recently I launched my own podcast, which in my business, it's a whole lot of love and no perfection. So I think so many of us hold ourselves back from doing things because it's not going to be exactly right. Like it's not edited or there's not the cover photo. I don't know about anyone else, but I underestimate how much effort goes into making many things. And then I give it a bash. So I put it out there. It's been out there for a week. It's been fabulous. I've had so many downloads, so many emails. And yeah, there is so much no perfection in there. And it's just been just a great way to connect with so many more people.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And wow, you've already got some downloads. That's pretty good. Mine did not have very many in the very beginning when I first launched it. So good for you on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. I have this conversation with people all along. It's like some people just don't want to take action because they want to wait for it to be perfect. But you know what? It's better to take messy action. Just get it out there and get something out there because you'll figure it out along the way, right?
I've already had so many learnings, like, because I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, I understand the concept and the material is great, but the delivery. And I remember the very first person I showed it to was my husband. He's like, you should number your episodes, make sure you mark it as explicit because, I've got a bit salty. I'm Aussie after all. And like all this stuff. And I went from excited to like deflated balloon. So I was like, choose my audience. So then I sent it out to my email list and I was like, I am available for like love and praise and excitement. I'm not available for any editing tips at this stage. And I think it's so much about what we do is we let other people inadvertently, burst our balloon by not being clear on what kind of feedback that we want. So yeah, I was so surprised to get so many downloads. Maybe it was a result of that email. They're like, what is this about? I need to go and check it. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that telling someone that it's going to be bad or salty or anything like that is a great marketing strategy. People are like, really? Let me check that out. How bad are we talking here? Yeah, so well done on that. Okay, so now with the good note, I mean, hey, you're kind of talking a little bit about some of the bad notes as well. So, because there are things that don't go as planned. So, is there something like just over your business career that just didn't go as planned, and how did you get out of it?
Oh, just as many things as have. Oh, so the biggest one that comes to mind is because I'm a coach. Initially, I coached one-to-one, and then I launched a group, and I didn't have very. I will like this was on me because sometimes I think we can get really blamey, but I didn't have clear guidelines, suggestions with my clients about the difference between one-on-one and group. So I expected, best laid plans, that the one-on-one would continue and then the group would be like a lower cost thing for people who, wanted to come into the world. I didn't realize that all my one-on-ones would then downgrade to the group. So actually hamstring my income overnight. And then I still gave them the same sort of service, like email, voice note support and stuff. I didn't hold the boundary there and go, actually, you've changed your way. So yeah, I overnight went from plenty to not much and was like, oh my goodness, how am I going to recover from this? But yeah, it bounced back and now I absolutely love it. But in that moment, sometimes we see one path and then it ends up going another. It was like, what have I done?
Yeah, wow. You know what? And that's probably something that many people have done, especially considering where, like, when we do want to really serve an audience and we see that it's too expensive for some people, we're like, oh, how can I offer something that's going to be a little less expensive? And then all of a sudden everybody goes to it. So, so then, how did you get out of it? It was probably some awkward conversations, wasn't it? Like, how did it work?
So it's interesting because I wasn't always the nope coach. What do they say? You teach what you most need to learn so you can learn it. I had a different niche back then, and I've re-niched recently. But at the time that it happened, I thought, oh my goodness, like this is done. I'm gonna have to go back to my soul-sucking job. But yeah, it was some challenging conversations, and I am reminded of Brene Brown. She has many quotes, but this one I love. It's like, choose discomfort over resentment. So it's like the discomfort of having the conversation. I basically recorded a video for the group, and I owned my place in it. I said, this is on me. Like, this is not on you guys. I think sometimes when we have a business hiccup, we can get blamey on everyone. I was like, this is on me. Because the other quote, I don't know who it is, but I love it. It's like, what you allow will continue. And it's like, I'm allowing this. I am responding to these messages. I am over giving. Hence why I work with overgivers now. So I basically did a video. I put it in the group. I tagged everyone way before the tag everyone tool was available. Like, I know that annoys a lot of people, but if you use it well, it's good, rather than you having to find everybody's name and tag them individually. And as a result of that, some people were upset and left. And, I understand that. But the majority of people were like, oh, and it's funny too, when you do something like that and you say, this is what's happened, this is what's going to happen from here on going forward. The number of people who sent me an email or like apologized who hadn't done anything, like, not that they were over apologizing, but it just opened up such a deep level of conversation. But the people who, I'm not saying who it was targeted at, but the people who were the front runners were the ones who kind of left. And yeah, it was a really awkward and bumpy moment in my business. But I think who I became as a coach as a result of that. And going forward, I have such clear boundaries now. And I know it is not for some people, but we're just not a fit. And that's okay. That frees them up to find a coach who's more suited for them. And it frees me up to be 100% me and not have to walk on eggshells, because that's just not helping anybody.
That's beautiful. You hear that so many times too, that those honest conversations always end up working out. And they all also, like you say, they end up pushing out people that shouldn't be in your life in the first place, right? It's good. Right on. So now, in the pre-chat, I learned a little bit about you. Turns out you work from home, your husband works from home, and you have kids. So how did you set up a jam room? What's going on with that? How do you not get interrupted?
This is such a great conversation, because like, it is a process, and there's not like a manual or a, how to work from home for dummies, but maybe I could write that now.
Yep, absolutely.
But so when we first started, like, my husband was only going to be working from home for a short time. That was how it was happening. So we have a house that I have an office, because I've always worked from home since before it was cool. And we didn't have any space for him. And we both spend a lot of time talking, podcasts. Well, I'm podcasting, he doesn't. So we can't be in an office together because it wouldn't work. So we were like, oh, okay, well, we set his desk and stuff up in my son's room. But then what we didn't realize was, because he's in my son's room, my son can't be in his room. So he ended up my son, that is, taking up the entire house, like his toys and his stuff spread from the lounge room to the kitchen to outside. And I was like, this is not working. Like, because, and also too, I couldn't send him to his room because my husband was in there. So it was like, so after a period of time, we're like, no, that's not it. So my husband's office is actually in our bedroom, but that works really well because neither of us are in our bedroom during the day. So he's just got like a little accordion thing behind him to like hide the bed. And so, yeah, his is in our bedroom, mine's in my office, and then the kids have their rooms. And then how do I keep them from interrupting me? I have a really high-tech system. It's a piece of paper, and it has yes written on one side and no written on the other. And so when my office door is shut, on the floor, it's not even on the wall because we're renting, so I'm not allowed to fix anything to the wall. On the floor is this piece of paper. And if I'm, say, handling emails, writing blogs, like doing back office tasks, it's on yes. So they know that they can come in and say, I want a drink of water, or, she breathed my air, or he's looking at me funny, kid stuff.
Yeah.
But if it's like right now I'm recording, it's saying no. So it's like, unless there is blood, because that's the other thing too, setting up your home office. When I had this complex, elaborate system, I said to both of them, don't interrupt unless it's important. And they're both nodding, going, okay, cool. Yep. All right, I get it. So here I am, and I'm recording something, and my daughter comes barging in, and I'm like, is it important? And she's like, yeah, it's really important. And I'm like, what is it? She goes, I can fit 27 blueberries in my mouth. And I'm like, we need to have a discussion about what important actually is. And I think this is the thing. Sometimes we assume, that people will get what we mean. So now it's kind of like, if there is blood, if you need to go to the hospital, something, this is the level of important that I'm talking. And a lot of people, when I explain this to them, they go, oh, don't you think that's really, really harsh? And I'm like, not at all, because I have a clear boundary about when I'm working, so that when I'm with them, like when I finish working, when I go out after this podcast, we can go outside and play in the sun. We can, watch a movie together and make some popcorn. Like, I am fully with them, because I used to like have my phone on me and have email on my phone and be answering clients, and no shame or shade to people who still do this. And one day my son said to me, you love your phone more than me. And that absolutely cut me, because I was like, wow, I'm there physically with them. Like, I'm having quantity time, but it's not quality. So I have really clear boundaries that when I'm working, I am working. And when I'm mumming, I am mumming. And when I'm reading a book and don't want to be interrupted by anyone, because I think so often we try and do it all, and we do all of it, but none of it, all poorly.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you completely. Like on all those points, it's very difficult, I think, sometimes when you're working from home, because all of the distractions are all there, like at all times, like for you too, not even just for the kids, but everything's there. And so, sometimes it can be really hard to just focus on the one thing you need to be focused on at that particular time, because there's so many other things to keep competing for your attention, right?
Oh, 100%. And that's the thing I work with a few clients on as well, because a lot of us have, been working from home. And if you worked in an office, generally, well, in Australia at least, I know different countries have different things, but you would get a 15-minute morning tea break and or a 15-minute afternoon tea break, and then a 30 to 1 hour lunch break. And in that time, you would chat to other people, maybe go outside, hang out in the lunchroom, but you would be away from your desk. When we start working from home, we don't take breaks. And even if we do, there are things to like, I'll just quickly put a load of washing on, or I'll quickly do the dishes. And it's like, we're not actually taking any time away. And those things in the office that we would factor in and praise, because it's like, if they're not paying me, I ain't sitting at my desk. But we don't realize the benefit to our body to get up and stretch by going for a walk, or to interact with somebody else outside of this. And then at home, we're like, no. So you're sitting at your desk eating your cereal, hoping you don't get it in your keyboard, multitasking and doing none of it well, but not actually. And then when we do take a break, so a lot of people go, I don't understand why my breaks aren't really having a break. And it's like, well, if you're writing a blog and then your break is checking your email, that is not a break. You're not switching. You're still doing the same sort of thing. And also you're responding to other people's demands on your time, which is adding to your stress. Why don't you just go, make yourself a cup of tea, or do a couple laps of the house, or sit outside and get yourself a real break?
Wow. And that leads right into the next topic, which is practice makes progress, or practice makes perfect, because routines and rituals are really important in that area. So sounds to me like you've got some of those. Can you share a few more?
So the first thing that I do is my own work, like fill my own cup. As much as it sometimes still feels selfish to me, that conditioning or that societal conditioning upbringing, but like, I've got to practice what I preach. I teach what I most need to know. So self first isn't selfish. So ideally I would do that when I first get up in the morning, but I have kids. So basically I drop the kids at school. Actually, now my husband drops the kids at school, because I was like, he works from home too. So I didn't realize when he was in an office, he would leave before the sun came up, come back after the sun went down. Obviously, I had to do all those things, and I wasn't resentful because I got it. But when he started working from home, I started to feel a bit resentful, because I was like, his 1 hour and a half commute has become the staircase, yet I still do all these things. But then I had to sit down and like have a conversation without him. I think sometimes we think we're being clear when we're hinting, like it'd be nice if.
Yeah.
So I remember sitting down one day and just saying, would you be open to doing more with the kids, because like you have the time now? And once again, it wasn't a fun conversation. I was kind of, this is uncomfortable, but I didn't want to be all passive aggressive kind of thing. I just wanted to be really, really honest. And as a result of that, he now does the morning. So he prepares the lunches and he takes the kids to school. And so many people say to me, oh, it must be nice, or nice for some. I'm like, yeah, it is. And also we co-created this. So I think sometimes we think, oh, all these things are really nice, but we've got to ask and advocate for them. So he does the morning thing, but even with them home, I don't relax, because sometimes they can come in or they can ask for things. So it's not like total peaceful time. So once he leaves to take them to school, then that is my time to, journal, meditate, like do my own thing, which sounds like really zen and pretentious. But when I don't do that, I don't work as well, because like I coach with people, I listen to their stuff all day. If I'm not in a place of feeling well inside, then I can't hold space for others. So once I said self first is not selfish. So once he leaves to take the kids to school, I do that. Then when he comes home, I make us a coffee. Well, I don't drink coffee, but he does. I have a cup of tea. And we have a little bit of a chat. Then he goes about his work day, and then I'll start my client work then. And then at lunch, one of us will either take the lead, or we would have had something from the night before that we just heat up. So we get to have lunch together, which is brilliant. Depending on calls, it doesn't always work because sometimes we have calls. And then in the afternoon, I pick up the kids. So I pick them up and take them to sport or music or whatever they have going on. And then we have the evening. But the really thing that we've gotten clear on is we've had to create some sort of system for the jobs, the vacuuming, the washing, because otherwise we would never get a break. Or, when you really need to do something, like I've got to respond to that email, but I don't want to. So, I'll just go and find something to do. Being really clear on the rest time so that you're not doing stuff to avoid doing your work.
Hi, it's Mark Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches, and I want to give two very big thumbs up to Tim Melanson and his Creative Crew agency. I have been using them for a long time, and I am 100% happy. They get the job done right, they are fast, and they let me focus on my business. I don't have to worry about anything. So again, I want to give them two very big thumbs up. I have no problem recommending them. I don't give testimonials for everyone because my name is attached to it, but I gladly do so for Tim and the Creative Crew agency. So use them, you won't regret it, and good luck.
Wow, yeah. I know when I first was self-employed, my place was super clean because that would be my procrastination. Oh, I'm just going to sweep,
Oh, 100%. When there's something that I don't want to do, like an email I don't want to respond to or whatever, I like do something random, like clean out the lint filter of the dryer, or pull apart the dishwasher and clean the middle of it. And Jeremy will be like, "What are you not wanting to do?"
Well, accountability is not bad. Good. Well, like, congratulations on having that awkward conversation, because that's exactly it. Hints do not work. They never have worked. And either we don't get them, or maybe we don't want to get them. I'm not sure which one it is. But it's definitely important to have those conversations. And I think that's great to it's probably really great for your kids because they get some activities with both parents now more frequently, right?
Yeah, so they've started walking to school now because we don't live that far from the school, and it's good exercise for the three of them. So on the way in, they get to chat and talk. And he loves history, and now the kids love history. I do not like history in any way, shape, or form. So it's interesting, but they get that bonding time that I don't need to listen to. And then on the way back, he can either tune into a meeting if there's something on, because so many things can be remotely, or he's also a avid podcast listener. So he gets that little time to himself as well. And I don't know, I haven't asked him, but I imagine his focus time at work would be so much better because he's not being at his desk. Because that's the other thing. When he started working from home, he he didn't, as I said, didn't get up to have lunch break, was eating at the desk, sat there all day. And it was kind of like his own health and well-being started to drop because he was at his desk all day. So now he gets that time up and away from the desk and some fresh air, and it's been really beneficial, like, and even he's saying, for his mood and productivity.
I love it. I love it. That's great. So now you mentioned that you work with clients, so you must do some coaching. And I'm wondering, what about you though? Like, do you have a coach? Like, what's your feelings on that kind of thing?
100%. I would never be without a coach. I believe a coach without a coach is like a doctor without a doctor. And funnily, right now, as we speak, my coach is also in my program, which, it cracks me up so much, because in the coaching world, or at least the coaching world that I'm part of, instead of it being a hierarchy, as in like, it kind of weird pyramid scheme dynamic where you work with this person who works with this person who works with this person, I think it's more kind of like the round table, because it's like, I coach on boundaries, which is something my coach is like, actually, I have something to learn from you here. And then she coaches on like, money mindset and stuff. And I have a lot to learn there. And it's amazing. And there's different people in my program who I've worked with in different aspects. Like one of my podcasts, my co-host is also in my program, and then I've worked with her. And I think there's something about like the rising tide lifts all ships, and us more traditionally in community, we would have different people who had different roles that we would go to for things. And then over time, I think society in general has transitioned to subject matter experts. And then, you put them kind of on the pedestal, and, they're the medicine woman, or they're this, that we don't then interact with. And I think the gift of the online world is us going back to more like, well, this is a person that helps me with this, but then having very clear boundaries, because, as a coach, sometimes you can inadvertently take over the session. And it's like, no, actually in this space, I'm the client. So having that, so sometimes clients that I work with who are also friends, if our session's an hour, we'll make it an hour 15. So we can have 15 minutes of like catch up. What's happening with this? What's happening with that? What are the kids doing? And then, okay, let's go. So we don't mess that up, because sometimes I think where it doesn't work well is it devolves to a chit chat and not a powerful coaching session, or you end up coaching the person that you're then paying for, and it gets all kinds of awkward. So yes, I always have a coach, at least one, sometimes several, depending, and just the space to take my own coach hat off and get people to look at my own messy mind is just invaluable.
Wow, that's amazing. This is the first I've heard of anybody who has clients that also are their coaches and vice versa. But I think it's brilliant. I mean, when you think about it, this whole thing about, oh, well, my coach is better than me type thing of like, well, they're not going to hire me for anything. That is really disingenuous, really, because there's nobody that is perfect at everything. It just doesn't make any sense. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. And it's the same thing as like when you are starting to hire people in your business, right? When you're looking to delegate, I mean, the whole point of that is that you're not perfect at something. So you need somebody who it's in their gift zone. And then you can also help them as well. So I think that's really cool. I know that it happens a lot in like regular delegating of business tasks, but it also makes so much sense in the personal coaching type stuff. So good on you for figuring that out. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, it works really well. But once again, you have to have really, really clear boundaries, because sometimes it can, as I said, devolve into more of a chit chat, or people take information. And this is something that I'm really clear with clients I have who are friends and all this sort of thing. What is said in the coaching container, it's kind of like Fight Club, except nobody gets beaten up. Stays in the coaching container, because sometimes, people, it's never nefarious, but people, when you're a coach, come kind of dump their stuff on you. And it's like, no, in the friendship circle, I'm just as much a like cheerleader or vent or support, but the coaching is what I get paid for, and having to be really clear on that. And once again, sometimes it can be offensive to people because they're like, oh, I wasn't after coaching. And it's like, I'm not saying that you're trying to get free coaching or anything like that, but when I feel the shift from friend Suze, who's like, yes, they're terrible and they're the worst in the world and whatever, to coach Suze, who's like, have you considered? And it's like, yeah, no, like this is the version of me. And it's something, to be mindful of. And another thing I have, with my friends is before they start dumping their stuff, and this is, I think, good for everybody, whether you're a coach or not, like, are you available for event? Like, do you have space to listen to event? And sometimes I'll be like, sure, hit me. And other times I'll be like, not right now. It doesn't mean that I don't love and care and want to support you. But if I'm at capacity and someone else is having a moment, I can't hold space for that. Like, I can't listen to that right now. It allows them to go find and ask someone else. Because where you're distracted, like, I know this is a perfect parent example, but I'm concentrating on something and the kids march in and they, can we do this? And you just go, yeah, like not even paying any attention. And next thing they run off excited and you're like, what did I just agree to? So if a friend is having a hard time and they need someone to be that shoulder to cry in or to, support them, and you're completely unavailable, it actually costs a friendship more if you listen and then don't really give them their full space, rather than saying, like, I'm at capacity today, circle back tomorrow or next week or whatever. It gives them space to find someone else to ask. And I think that's something we don't do. We just go and dump our stuff on everybody. And clear communication is so key. And also choosing your audience, once again, and I practice what I most need to know. All excited about my own podcast, show my husband, and he like picks it apart. I'm like, see, this is an example of, this is what he does for a living. He thinks he's being helpful. What I wanted was to say, yeah, you're awesome, well done. So sometimes we get really annoyed at people when we realize, like, this wasn't the right person to go to in this situation.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, and I mean, on that same note, do you have a minute for me to vent? But there's also, on the other side of it, am I listening just to listen, or am I listening to give you advice? Right?
Yes, being clear on what kind of feedback you want. So it depends. Like, some people, even friends who know what I do, and they present me with something, and I kind of sit back and I'm like, so do you want friend Sue's response, or do you want like coach Sue's response? Because sometimes friends with Sue's will be like, oh, they're terrible, they're the worst in the world. Like, I get in the pool with them.
Yeah.
Whereas coach Sue's would be like, have you considered? And they'll be like, oh. And also sometimes you don't want that. Like, when with my podcast or with anything I put out, my book, there are times where I'm like, hey, can you give me some feedback? Like, I'm after constructive criticism, or I'm after, improvements or edits. But, often when we've really created something that we've spent a lot of hours and time on, and I think this is something that we don't consider. It's not that we don't value the suggestions, but you've spent a lot of time on something and all you're really wanting is someone to tell you, hey, you did a good job. And someone's like, oh no, you should capitalize this, or you've spelt this wrong. And it just suddenly feels like, oh. So, but you've got to be clear on what you're asking for when you're sharing something.
Yeah, I agree 100%. All right, so it's time for your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business right now.
So I run a group program called Why Wait, and it's a W and an 8, which is like a sideways or upright infinity. And it's, what are you waiting for? And so many of us are like, I'll get to that, after the kids are at school, after my birthday, after Valentine's Day. But if you're looking for a reason not to take action, you'll always find one. So Why Wait is about taking action now, getting the shit done that you actually want to get done, and doing it in a community of other people who are also potentially people pleasers, overgivers. Because you know what it's like to sign up to a program like, this is going to be the thing. And then 2 weeks in, you're not even logging in or listening to anything anymore. And you're like, oh, that wasn't the thing, and looking for the next thing. There's no magic bullet. There's no quick fix. So join a community of people who are also putting themselves last, so that together we can heal in community and start taking the baby steps that even in your brain will be screaming, what's that ever going to do? But these baby steps done every day for a long period of time result in, big changes. So that's what's going on in my world. And if you want to check it out, head over to my website.
Yeah, that's so smart too, because I mean, that's the thing, is that all of us sort of want these big changes right now, but our brains don't work that way. It's little bits at a time that make progress, right?
100%. Because when you think about it, it's really confronting to our brain to have a big change. Like, it upsets our nervous system, and then we need to regulate. And then so many of us, how do we regulate? Like overeating or over drinking or over scrolling. And then we're not actually taking any action because we're calming ourselves down. And so many people, we get on ourselves and then we're like, oh, I just need to find the right diet or the right program. And it's like, no, you just need to find another way to calm down, because this behavior is actually makes sense. Because in times of old, if we were fearing for our lives, like being chased by a tiger or something, you're not going to slow down to eat. So when you're eating and using that against yourself, it's actually your body's inherent way to be like, I'm safe in this moment. There are other ways to be safe. And that's what we explore in the group, and just rewiring our body's response to that.
Love it. So who would be the person that would get the most out of one of your programs?
Anyone. So like I work primarily with women. I haven't had any men in the program, tend to work more one-on-one, but women who like feel like they're always last. And it's just like, I will do this one day. Like once the kids are old enough to, tie their own shoes, or people who I lovingly refer to them as my wannapreneurs, not with judgment, because I was one too. I went from certification to certification. Like once I've got this under my belt, then I can start my business. And one day I realized, my husband said it tongue in cheek, but it changed my life. He's like, you don't have a business, you have an expensive hobby. And I was like, oh, but he was right. So if you've been putting off whatever action you want to take to one day when you've lost weight, made money or whatever, but the obstacle is the way, and you actually want to start chipping away at that, this is the program for you.
Awesome. So how do we find out more about this then, Suzanne?
Head over to my website, suzanneculberg.com, which I'm sure you'll put in the show notes, because Culberg is an interesting spelling. And it's all laid out and explained on there.
Awesome. Thank you so much for rocking out with me today, Suzanne. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
Awesome. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment. We'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.